Why are you trying to get to the U.S.?
For the safety of me and my family, I couldn't stay.
The battle over border security could be a deciding factor this election.
The asylum system is open. The border is not.
The presidential nominees are talking tough.
We're running against a person that had no idea what she was doing on the border.
We know our immigration system is broken, and we know what it takes to fix it.
But what would it take for any real reforms?
How long will you continue to do this here?
This is CBS News Bay Area with Elizabeth Cook.
Now, we know the number of illegal migrant crossings is actually cooling off, but the battle over the border is only heating up. And there's no easy solution to this, but there's a lot on the line. Today, we'll ask a Bay Area immigration expert what would change over a Trump or Harris administration, and would anything really help? In the race for the White House, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump both agree that immigration is one of the biggest concerns for voters right now. Our Ann Makovic shows us both are talking tough on the campaign trail about how they plan to address this issue. Ann?
Yeah, Republicans have seen this as sort of a weak spot for Harris because during her tenure as vice president, she was basically put in charge of some of the issues at the border, specifically trying to figure out the root causes of a lot of people from Central America working their way north. And now on the campaign trail, she admits more needs to be done.
We know our immigration system is broken, and we know what it takes to fix it. Comprehensive reform that includes strong border security and an earned pathway to citizenship.
She is facing questions over the all-time levels of unlawful border crossings reported at the beginning of President Biden's term in the White House. This year, those numbers reached a 3-year low after an executive order banning most migrants from asylum. But former President Trump is on the attack.
We will stop the Biden-Harris invasion of people that don't belong in our country. They're invading our country.
His campaign says they'll stop so-called catch and release policies and finish the border wall. Both campaigns are hammering their message in new ads, trying to convince voters that they will be tough on border security. Well, a recent CBS News poll found a majority of voters think border crossings would increase if Harris wins and decrease under Trump, who has promised a mass deportation. But it's that kind of language that the mayor of Mesa, Arizona is using as a reason. He is a Republican, but he says he's supporting Harris.
Immigrants are an essential part of the economy in our country, and particularly in Arizona. If we did resort to mass deportation, that would crash our economy like we've never seen before.
On Friday, Harris secured an historic endorsement from LULAC, that is the nation's oldest Latino civil rights group, which up until then had never formally backed a candidate. Nationally, Harris leads Trump 52 to 47% amongst Hispanic voters. But Harris still trails President Biden, who received 65% of the Hispanic vote in 2020. And according to the group Unidos US, which is a Hispanic civil rights and advocacy organization, they say 1 in 4 Hispanic voters will be voting in their first presidential election this year. So it's going to be interesting, Liz.
It certainly will. All right, Ann, thanks so much. Now, we're also hearing more from the Latino civil rights group LULAC about why they believe a Harris presidency is what the country needs.
Her idea, the infrastructure bill that put jobs, especially construction jobs, and re-innovated the hospitality industry. Those are jobs where Latinos play a big portion. She talked about cutting taxes for people who work as waiters and bartenders, people that are kind of forgotten and on the margins. She's talking about, I'm going to waive taxes for those individuals on tips, and so on. Those steps are things that I think make a difference in the average lives of working class Latino families throughout America, and it's paying off.
Still ahead, whose policies will really improve our immigration system, and what can they really do about it? We'll talk with a USF expert to help break it all down for us. And we used to see packed scenes at the U.S. border with people just trying to cross, but lately, this. We'll hear from a border agent about what's led to a dramatic drop in migrant apprehensions. start of this year, the number of migrant apprehensions at the U.S. southern border has dropped dramatically. Adam Yamaguchi spoke to a border agent near Tucson, Arizona, to find out what's changed.
On this desolate stretch of the Arizona-Mexico border, we rode along with Border Patrol agents searching for migrants. Months ago, the Tucson sector saw record levels of illegal crossings. Today, it's much quieter.
How many illegal apprehensions are you conducting these days?
So right now, we are averaging anywhere from 200 to 400.
What was that number like 7, 8 months ago?
You're talking about 1,800, 2,000 a day.
7 months ago, when the U.S. was seeing record numbers of migrants illegally crossing into the U.S., a number of camps like this were set up all along the border to provide refuge for migrants as they are awaiting Border Patrol processing. But since that time, most of these camps have been dismantled or sit abandoned like this.
Since President Biden's executive order in June restricted asylum access, migrant apprehensions have dropped to their lowest level in years. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas defended the administration's actions.
The asylum system is open. The border is not. People need to take the lawful, safe, and orderly pathways.
At this crowded migrant shelter just across the border in Nogales, Mexico, we saw the policy's impact. With few resources, volunteers help feed migrants and teach them about the immigration process. For Miguel Flores, it's a chance at a new life away from cartel violence in central Mexico. He's been here with his family for 3 months.
Why are you trying to get to the U.S.?
Not a decision I wanted to make, he says. But for the safety of me and my family, I couldn't stay. Every morning he tries to get an appointment through a U.S. government app for asylum seekers. Less than 1,500 are available each day.
How long will you continue to do this here?
¿Por cuánto tiempo esperas esperar?
I don't know, he says, but I have faith, God willing, that I will get an appointment.
The scorching summer months typically see a drop in illegal crossings, though there's been a sharper decline this year. But political turmoil in Venezuela and elsewhere could fuel yet another surge.
Now, for people who do make it across the border and here to the Bay Area, an immigration court in Concord is taking up cases for 10 counties across the region. It opened up about 6 months ago, and until then, the bulk of cases had been handled in San Francisco. The Department of Justice is opening new offices in areas where migrants are settling in, like Concord, due to a rising number of cases being brought to immigration court. Our Jose Martinez learned more from a policy analyst at the Migration Policy Institute.
Last fiscal year, the courts completed over 500,000 immigration court cases, which is really an astonishing number. But at the same time, the courts received more than 1 million new cases.
Now, some advocates are skeptical of this new court system, saying it leads to faster deportations without due process.
We want to make sure that we also get an equal expansion of resources for these immigrants to be able to get legal representation in immigration court.
Now, nonprofits have been helping provide free legal services to immigrants in the Bay Area, like Stand Together Contra Costa. Joining me now is USF Professor of Law and Migration Studies and also the author of the book Humanizing Immigration, Bill Ong Hing. Thank you so much for being with us. I want to start with immigration and the upcoming election. Trump and Harris both agree that something needs to be done at the border. Trump is promising mass deportations. Kamala Harris wants comprehensive reform. Do you think their plans are a reflection, though, that voters on both sides want a harder line on immigration?
I do think that the Republicans have been able to control the narrative that there's a border crisis. I don't look at it that way. I look at it as a humanitarian crisis because I've been at that shelter that your correspondent was at in Arizona just a few months ago. And so that's the difference, is that there is not a border crisis. There's a humanitarian crisis. Now, at the border, I have to say that the Biden-Harris position at the border and the Trump position at the border is hard to distinguish because both of them have taken a very hard position in terms of not allowing in large numbers of people to apply for asylum in any given day. So I'm disappointed at that. I think that the big difference is interior policies, and that's where there's a huge difference between Trump's policies and the Harris platform.
So which plan do you think will ease the situation going on down there? Would anything really help? Does something deeper need to happen?
Something deeper definitely needs to happen. And here's where Harris has an advantage, okay? So when Biden went into office, he appointed her to look into root causes of violence in Central America. So she's been working on that. She's actually become an expert on what are the best ways of addressing violence and root causes. And so, for example, she's been trying to get corporations to open more businesses and create more jobs. Her big challenge is funneling money into nonprofit organizations and government entities that are reliable to invest in education and invest in combating violence in a humanitarian way. That is something that Trump has no interest in. Trump did not want to invest any time during his 4 years in trying to figure out how to reduce violence in Central America. So that's also a very important difference between Harris and Trump.
So I'm not quite sure if many people realize how difficult it actually is to become an American citizen. It's costly. It can take years, even decades. What do you want people to know about the immigration process, and should that element of this change?
That is a great question, Liz, and the answer is absolutely yes. So the main way people immigrate is through a family-based immigration system and then some employment-based systems. There's a huge waiting list for people in the family-based immigration, years and years and years. That is something that Harris has encouraged expanding, is family immigration. On the other hand, the Trump administration tried to reduce family immigration. So that's one thing, is fixing the family immigration system. The other thing is the asylum system. As one of the comments before this part started, there are hundreds of thousands of pending asylum applications. And the problem is there's not enough people to help those folks apply for asylum. So we need a system that allows for more representation. Organizations, for example, our clinic at University of San Francisco, we represent over 400 people, but we have a 200-person wait list. That's the same for every agency around the Bay Area. We're inundated, and we need more help and resources to help the folks process their asylum applications properly.
And those applications are complicated, but maybe that's by design.
You know, life could be much simpler, because I do think that if somebody makes a valid claim for asylum, they should automatically be determined eligible for asylum unless the government can prove that they're not going to be persecuted. Because we don't want to make the mistake of deporting someone who's going to be persecuted. If we're going to make a mistake, I'd rather let somebody stay here who's made a claim who might not get persecuted. So that would solve a lot of problems if we develop a presumption of eligibility rather than this very difficult way of establishing asylum eligibility.
All right, Professor Bill Hing with the University of San Francisco, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Now, we can expect a lot more ahead in the presidential race, including the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. Our Ryan Yamamoto will be there, bringing us live coverage all next week. Well, still ahead, we look at homelessness impacting a lot of the migrant families here in California, and how a school principal is stepping in to help some who say they have nowhere else to turn. Homelessness impacts a lot of migrant families all around California, and some are now dealing with Governor Newsom's recent order for the removal of homeless camps right as school is starting. Reporter Aaron Dickens shows us how one principal in San Diego is stepping in to help.
Carmen is from Nicaragua. She is living in Cesar Chavez Park with her 3 daughters. Her kids will attend Perkins Elementary School. It is right down the block.
Very grateful to the principal. Because he gives them a lot of support that no one else wants to give.
Their children
I mean, they come here because they want what's best for their children, and I want to break the cycle of poverty.
Fernando Hernandez is the principal. He says with nowhere to turn, the school allows Carmen and her family to use the facilities, like taking showers at the school. Hernandez has also stepped in on their behalf, speaking with the Port of San Diego to make sure they continue to stay at the park.
We understand that Governor Newsom has given an order to clear out homeless encampments. We understand that there is political pressure, and we are asking that they wait as long as possible.
Hernandez is also reaching out to local nonprofits to try to get the families in the park housing.
There are a lot of wonderful people in San Diego, and I am hopeful that every single one of these families will find a place to stay.
Harbor Police in San Diego have issued violation notices to people in the park. Carmen and her husband say they will try to stay as long as they can since nearby shelters are completely full. But they're packing up their belongings in case they need to move out quickly. We'll be right back.
This is Pix Plus. More of what you want, more often. More local news in the morning and the primetime edition. The only 8 and 9 p.m. news. With Devin Feely, Elizabeth Cook, Juliette Goodrich, and Sarah Dachi. Groundbreaking original storytelling from the KPIX newsroom. Plus Bear Politics, Project Earth, and weather like you've never seen. The primetime edition. Weeknights on the new Pix Plus. 44 Cable 12.